My god, this game, it was too much. Like, when I started this game, I was completely overwhelmed. And I want to make this clear that this game is very complicated. And it's the first thing I'm going to say because a lot of people will go into this game confused, not knowing what the fuck they're meant to do. Because the game's tutorials aren't the best, and they're not the easiest to understand, and the combat itself is pretty complicated, and it's very different from all the other Star Ocean games. Like, this is completely different from any Star Ocean game you've ever played in terms of combat, but it's familiar in certain ways. What I mean by this is that the combat system kind of plays like a sort of modern Tales game in a way, though it's kind of like Valkyrie Profile 2 in the sense that you use AP and you attack with all the different face buttons, though you could also say that it's the same as Tales games in a way. But the way AP works, you could say it's similar to the Soul system in Tales of Berseria. You perform well, you gain more AP, which means that you can use more moves, and there's tools to allow you to play well, but understanding how to use those tools is not easy. So the game puts a lot of emphasis on this robot companion named Duma, and this robot companion is pretty much the entire combat system. Like, the entire combat system revolves around this robot. Like, if you want to do anything advanced in the combat, you have to utilize this robot, and this robot has like a meter, and you have to charge the meter by attacking enemies. But usually you should have enough meter to engage enemies. So in a way, it's sort of like the hero run technique in Resonance of Fate, although it doesn't cost you health, but it costs you part of a meter, in the sense that it's kind of required in order for you to play properly. If you just rush in and start hacking and slashing like your average action game, you're going to get destroyed. It's gonna feel horrible if you play it that way. The way you've got to play this game is you've got to utilize Duma, and you've got to basically zip across the battlefield and just finish enemies with a combo after charging at them with Duma. And you've kind of got to utilize Duma's abilities to get bonuses and stuff. For example, you have blindsides, which were maneuvers you could perform in Star Ocean 4 by timing a dodge just before an enemy was about to reach or attack you, and if they were about to hit you and you dodged, you dodge around them and perform a blindside, which would weaken them and allow you to deal bonus damage to them. It was a really satisfying and simple maneuver to use in that game, but it doesn't really work that way in this game, because the dodge button doesn't really let you charge up like the blindside did. So while Star Ocean 4 required you to charge and lure an enemy to you to attack, in Star Ocean 6 you don't have to lure the enemy at all in regards to like moving close to you and attacking. You don't have to wait for them to reach you. Instead, basically, when an enemy is facing you, especially when they're attacking you or they're about to attack you, you basically use Duma, you fly into the air, and you charge at them just before they attack you, and before they attack you, you turn. You press the analog stick left or right, and you'll turn around, and you'll evade that attack, perform a blindside, and that will basically give you bonuses, which will deal extra damage to them and leave them helpless. That's sort of the way it works, like, based on the gist of what I've played. And it took me a while to figure all that out, by the way. I mean, what you can do with a dodge is that if you time your dodges well, then you can actually perform a well-timed dodge, which gives you more AP to use on more moves. Now, you can basically map moves to any of the face buttons. Now, the good news about Star Ocean 6 is that you can basically customize your control layout, and I highly recommend doing this because the default controls suck. I recommend mapping circle as the dodge button because it just makes more sense to me. I don't know about you guys, but to me it does. L1 is just terrible for the dodge, and you'll want circle. And put L1 as just an extra attack, because it's not as important to have loads of attacks, whereas it is important to have a dodge in this game. Because this game is not an aggressive game. A lot of people will go into this game thinking, oh, it's just a dumb hack and slash, kind of like what Valkyrie Elysium sort of is in a way, and they'll just rush in and just start hacking and slashing, but then they'll realise that they're running out of AP, and it's kind of like Fury in Star Ocean until the end of time, where if you run out of Fury, you can't do anything, and you kind of have to stand still to regain your Fury. Well, fortunately, in this game, you don't have to stand still to restore it like you did in Star Ocean 3. You can just walk around, but if you dodge, it will kind of delay it, so you have to walk around to restore it. And yeah, but if you played Star Ocean 3, you'd know that wouldn't work. You'd have to stand still, perfectly still, because if you walk around, it would not restore, and that was really annoying. So basically, you have like as much AP as you have based on how well you're playing, like well-timed dodges and stuff, which accumulate more AP and all that. And you'll lose AP if you perform badly. I'm not sure exactly what causes you to lose AP, but I know it's happened to me before by getting hit by certain moves or something. But yeah, this game is very difficult at the start. I highly recommend playing on Earth difficulty, because if you're playing on Galaxy difficulty, you are going to get bodied. I am serious, you really are. Especially in the early game, because some of the enemies can be pretty tough in this game, and they will destroy you, they will ruin your day if you don't know what you're doing. And yeah, like there's situations where you can really screw yourself. Like if you lose too much AP, it can be difficult to recover from that, as you'll have limited AP to work with. And if Duma doesn't have much gorge, you're not really going to be able to do much, but you have to do stuff because you have to attack to fill the gorge up. So you kind of have to balance your AP with Duma. You can't just spam attacks, and you can't just spam Duma. You have to interchange between both to make combat work. And when you do, it does work. But, like I say, do everything in a sequence. Like, you have to use Duma, you have to do your attack, and, you know, when you're about to run out of AP, or you run out of AP, you have to kind of, like, focus on defense for a bit, or you can use Duma to, like, sort of, like, move away and get your bearings, only to move back in with Duma and continue fighting. That's sort of how it works, and it's kind of like a passive-aggressive sort of play in a way, but yeah, it encourages you to utilize the well-timed dodge and stuff. The downside with this is the AI in this game, because even if you play well, the AI aren't going to play well, because this is Star Ocean. This isn't Ys, and because of that, you're going to have to deal with healing the AI, and when you're in boss fights, I will guarantee you the AI will die very, very quickly, and you'll have to spam items, just like in every other Star Ocean game ever created. So if you thought that was improved, think again. It's the same shit. Now, obviously, like, later down the line, there'll probably be a healer character to help with that, but right now, there is no healer character, so you kind of have to heal everybody using blueberries and stuff all the time. And the healing animation in this game, I don't know if it is the longest, but it's definitely one of the longer item use animations in the series so far. Like, my god, like, it takes ages for you to freaking throw a goddamn healing item to save someone, and during that wait time while you're fiddling around in your pocket, you might die and get a game over. So yeah, it's not exactly ideal. Now, you can pause the game at any moment and use items, and you can change like tactics and stuff, but the tactics you can change are very limited. You can only allow the AI to like spread out or focus on one target, but they don't really keep away from enemies, so you can't order them to be more defensive like you can in Ys. You can only like tell them what targets to target, or basically to target whoever they want. So you don't really have much control over the AI at all. So yeah, that kind of sucks. And that isn't the only problem, unfortunately, because there's another problem, and it's the exact same problem Valkyrie Elysium has, and it's the camera. Well, I mean mainly like dealing with all the enemies on screen and constantly getting back attacked because an enemy is going to hit you from behind. And yeah, like, here's the deal. The thing about Star Ocean is that the lock-on problem isn't as big of a deal because of Duma, because when you use Duma, you kind of like pull back and you can like target by moving targets, and you're in a safe position to do it, and then you can charge at that target and focus that target. But that won't stop enemies from attacking you from behind, and it will happen quite often. And spells in this game can be absolutely brutal. Like, they will deal a ton of damage to you, and sometimes they can be cast multiple times, and yeah, it's nasty. Like, there's so many times where I was near death just simply because I was hit by multiple earth graves, and they can come at any time, and it's really nasty. So yeah, you kind of have to be prepared for that. It's kind of like the opposite of Star Ocean 5, where spells were more or less useless against you just simply because you could block them and then counter them, which a lot of people don't really comment about that on Star Ocean 5, but yeah, a lot of spells in Star Ocean 5 were very easy to block and counter, and that kind of made magic using enemies in Star Ocean 5 pretty useless if you knew what you were doing. But in this game, it's kind of the opposite. They're deadly, because it's hard to tell when a spell's going to hit you, and yeah, it's hard to know when to dodge when a spell just appears out of nowhere, like Earthgrave. So yeah, spellcasters in this game are deadly. Hopefully the character spellcasters are deadly, but so far I really have no idea. Now, another thing about this game is that your party members will be zipping all over, and it's hard to tell whether party members are the enemy or not, because the combat is just so fast paced and you'll be zipping around all over the place so much that you'll just lose track of what's going on. Like, if you thought battles were chaotic in Star Ocean 5, they're even more chaotic in this game because of all the zipping around, and you'll just lose your bearings all the time. And because there's usually a ton of enemies at once with very little crowd control, at least so far. I mean, maybe when you have magic spells you can actually do better crowd control, but as of right now there really isn't much crowd control. So yeah, like when there's a ton of enemies, they can all gang up on you while you're focusing one enemy, and it can be a real pain in the ass. And while you can, if you play well, you can blindside all of them to like stun them and like destroy them easily. If you fuck that surprise attack up, it can be a fucking nightmare to deal with a large group of enemies, and you kind of have to like get a better position and try again. And yeah, it's really hard if you try and rush in and hit things, because you're just gonna get gangbanged. And that's kind of how the combat feels. It's really challenging, and it's brutal, and it's ruthless, and it's complicated. But I did play the game a bit more after the beginning section, and I fought a boss that came out of fucking nowhere, which was this giant mud giant, probably a callback to Star Ocean 3. I'll address the callback soon, because there's quite a few. And yeah, that boss absolutely floored me. The good news is that I could actually run away from that boss, because my god, I had to run away and back into the fight so many times. But the good news is when I ran away and came back, he had the same health points, so I didn't have to restart the entire fight. And you can even surprise attack that boss as well. Now, not all the bosses you can do that, because a lot of the bosses in this game you can't run away from, but this was kind of like a mini boss that you could just find on the field somewhere. And yeah, I just saw it and I'm like, this guy's not going to be friendly, and he wasn't. He absolutely bodied me. But it was at that point where I got to really see the combat more fleshed out, because I had to really learn it. And you know, I got to utilize the well-timed dodge and learn its patterns, and I was like, yeah, I'm starting to get this. So then I started to utilize Duma to rush into his arm, and then I would basically start doing blindsides, and I'm like, what's going on? And then yeah, that was a rough fight, but then I started experimenting with blindsides, and yeah, it all clicked, and I can see it being really satisfying. But it's just a lot to take in, and it's very overwhelming, and it was really hard for me to piece together what the combat was like. But as I say, right now all I can say is that the combat is interesting, but I really need to have more time with it to truly address whether it's good or not, because while I do notice some flaws, it has potential to be something great. I just need to experience more of it. That's basically the gist of it. And as I say, the combat is very customizable, because you can customize the entire control layout. You can like customize your moveset completely. You can even add a hold button, which you can cancel into at any time, which will do a different move. So yeah, when it comes to like the amount of moves you have, there's a ton. You have access to more moves than any Star Ocean game at once in this game. You don't have to like set a maximum of, I think it was 6 chain combos in Star Ocean 4, and that was the biggest. In Star Ocean 3 it was like 4, and that was if you were lucky. But in this there's a lot more, because you have 9 combos which are all linear, like Valkyrie profile chains. Like, it's basically like Valkyrie profile in the sense that you, like, when you press the button it just goes into like a linear chain of moves, which is up to 3, and that's for each button. But if you add the whole moves to that, then that adds 3 extra attacks, so that means you can map 12 attacks to a single character, and that allows for a lot of flexibility, so that definitely needs to have some praise. And like I say, the combat rewards you for playing well when you know what you're doing, and it's pretty fast paced when you know what you're doing as well. But when you don't know what you're doing, it can feel sluggish, and at the start of the game when you don't have Duma, the combat is at its worst. The combat is just absolutely dreadful without Duma. It really is, and you really have to learn Duma quickly. So yeah, but enough about the combat, because the combat is hurting my brain trying to pick it apart. But let's talk about the rest of it, because the thing that I want to talk about the most is the characters, because I really like the protagonists of this game. I mean, well, there's 2 of them, but the characters so far have all been likable, and they've all had some sort of chemistry to them, which has made them instantly compelling, like right from the get-go, which you can't say the same about other Star Ocean games. And they've done it in a way that makes the characters like compelling but not cringe like in Star Ocean 4. And I think they've found the right balance. They're not boring characters, but they're not cringe characters. They're just right. So that's kind of how I see things right now. There's some interesting character dynamics, but I haven't seen much because there aren't that many characters. But I'm assuming there will be, because I have seen some of the trailers for the characters and I've seen some of their personalities in that, and I'm like, I can't wait to see how these characters play off of each other. But I also want to bring up Raymond as the protagonist. He's probably the coolest looking protagonist in the entire series, and his personality, I can't fault it. His personality is fine. I think he's a pretty decent character, honestly. Like, he's way better than fucking Edge Maverick, and he's a lot less boring than other characters in the series, which are just kind of lame. He comes across as a more likable character than those characters, in my opinion, and yeah, I just think that his design is really awesome, and I just like how laid back he is. He's kind of like Cliff if he was the main character, sort of character, if that makes sense. That's kind of what Raymond is, and that alone makes me like him a lot, because Cliff was basically the chill, like, cool guy of Star Ocean 3. So if he's the protagonist, which Raymond pretty much is, sort of the Cliff of this game, then that's pretty cool. And Letitia is also a protagonist as well, though you don't get to play as her in the demo. She sort of comes across as the voice of reason of the group. And then you have Albert, who's kind of a dick, but that's why I like him. I think the character interactions are a lot more compelling than previous Star Ocean games, as there's a lot more potential for back and forth in this game from what I've seen, and honestly, like, the characters just seem more interesting. And also, I think the characters, as I say, they look really good as well. I like the character designs so far too. And yeah, like, speaking of the visuals, this game is pretty damn gorgeous. And I played this game on the performance focused mode, which means that I don't have as good graphics as someone who picks the more graphical focused mode. Now, I did notice a lot of pop-in in this game, and that might be due to the fact that I picked the performance mode. I'm assuming that the other mode, like the graphics mode, doesn't have the pop-in, but the pop-in with the performance mode was pretty bad. Like, I mean really bad, because you would have objects in the background that wouldn't appear, like, even though they're right next to you. Like, you'd have something that is right next to you not appear until you, like, take 2 steps, and then something just pops up right next to you. I'm talking about pop-up that is that bad. So, yeah, that's what you're going to get if you pick the performance option. Not that it really bothers me, but if you're really anal about that, then yeah, it's going to be a big problem on that mode. But I'm assuming if you pick the graphics option, it's not going to be there, but maybe it is. Someone's going to have to play the demo themselves and find out. But yeah, I think considering that fact, I think for performance mode, this game looks gorgeous. I don't know why people are complaining. I think maybe it's because they have experienced better graphics before, maybe, but honestly, graphics aren't that important. I think it's more important to have a good art style, and I think this game looks absolutely gorgeous. Like I say, the draw distance to me looks really good. I mean, yeah, sure, there are a few textures that look a bit iffy, but it's not that big of a deal to me. Like, I don't really care that much about graphics, and I'm not that bothered about like a few textures. All that matters to me is that overall the game looks nice, and to me the game really does look nice. I mean, the skybox is absolutely gorgeous. It's hands down one of the best looking skyboxes I've ever seen. Like, it's probably one of the best skyboxes I've seen since like back when I played World of Warcraft and I went into Outland and I looked up in the sky and I looked up at the twisting lever. That sort of skybox, like you can see fucking planets in the background and all this other stuff. It's really awesome, and also like the environments in general look great, and it just blends in with the skybox so well, and I just really love it. And the music is pretty damn good as well. I noticed one of the tracks in one of the areas that you go to just before the first village, like the field area, that music kind of reminds me of Around the Wilderness in Star Ocean 3. It's kind of got the same sort of like vibe to it in a way. I'm not sure if it's actually based on it, but it does sound similar to that song if you've heard it before. And the music that plays in the ruins, my god, that music is absolutely gorgeous. Like, let's put it this way, it's very hard to decide now which soundtrack I like better, the Beziel Forest or the Ruins song in Star Ocean 6, because the Beziel Forest music in Valkyrie Elysium is good, but the Ruins music in this game is good as well. So yeah, it's really, really hard for me to decide between those two songs. So yeah, the music is really good, but like I say, it's Motoi Sakuraba. And yeah, so next I want to get on to the rest of the game, because as we all know, Star Ocean is known for its skill systems and stuff. I haven't experienced any item creation yet, but I have dabbled in the skill system, and what they have done is a compromise. So basically, to better explain this so that I don't come across as off-putting, because I know this is going to put people off, they've added a skill tree. Now, before people start panicking, it's not what you think. The skill tree isn't the same thing as how you upgrade specialties. It's basically how you learn new specialties. That's kind of how it is. So basically, you can learn your moves and like abilities in any order you want. I don't know if it's actually tied to specialties or item creation yet, but I know that it basically allows you to learn moves in any order you please. Sort of. I mean, it's restrictive, but that's probably for balancing reasons, to be honest. I mean, obviously they kind of have to balance it, but it's like, instead of like having a linear level up system like Star Ocean 4 where you learn new moves and abilities by leveling up, in this game you learn new moves and abilities your way. So if you want to learn this attack first, then you can go for this attack early, or you can wait until later to learn this attack, so you get to choose. But if you want to upgrade your moves and skills, then that's easy. It's just like the previous games. You just go into the upgrade menu and you just put skill points into it, so you can't go wrong with that. So basically, it's like when you used to go to skill shops in Star Ocean 1 and 2, that's probably going to be history. I think that's kind of been replaced with the skill tree. And obviously there's also one for Duma as well, and you collect these crystals around the world, which, by the way, like, there's a lot of exploration value in this game, and it really rewards you handsomely for exploring around the world, because this world is huge and there's a lot of hidden treasures and all of that. Like, you thought Star Ocean 4's maps were huge? My god, this takes it to a whole new level. Like, I saw just one area of the game and it was half the size of an entire planet in Star Ocean 4, and that was just one area in the game. And then I was looking at the main map and seeing where I was and seeing how big the area was, and I'm like, holy shit. Then I brought up another map and I saw the world map, and I was like, holy fuck, this is massive. Like, this world map is insanely huge, and I'm guessing, based on the trailer, that this is only one of the worlds that you get to explore. Maybe there's another one. But when I saw that world map, I was expecting a very small map, considering the fact that this is a game about exploring different planets. But it seems to me that the map was freaking huge, and the areas are freaking huge as well. So yeah, there's a lot to explore in this game. You can spend ages just running around and flying around with Duma and exploring every nook and cranny and finding hidden treasure chests. So if you're a sort of person who likes to explore, this is it. This is the game for you. Like, even visually, as I say, because the visuals are gorgeous as well. So yeah, this is definitely something that I can definitely advocate for if you're into that. So yeah, as I say, Duma's movement allows you to like get from place to place very efficiently, so you don't have to sprint like in Star Ocean 4, and it doesn't feel like you're walking at a snail's pace like in Star Ocean 5. You can sprint if you want, but I just think using Duma's better because you can just zip across everywhere and you can just spam Duma to get from place to place, because when you're not in battle you can use Duma limitlessly, and yeah, you can just fly around, why not? And yeah, it kind of feels like you're playing East 9 in that sense. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of the demo. I don't really think I need to bring up much more. I forgot, there is one thing that I do need to bring up. Well, actually a couple of things. There's private actions. Not much to say here. Private actions seem to take place in towns, and you just go automatically into private action mode whenever you enter a town. So yeah, and you just basically find them in towns and talk to them, and yeah, when you do, instead of just like in Star Ocean 5 where you just have the usual seamless cutscene, they actually go into a sort of cutscene perspective, so the camera focuses on the characters and their expressions, which to me is a pro. That's definitely something that is good, because I think it was kind of hard to focus the camera on what was going on with the private actions in 5. That's no longer a problem in Star Ocean 6. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Another thing I wanted to mention, and this is likely due to the fact that, and I only just learned this recently, Masaki Norimoto is the director for this game, which is definitely a good sign because he's the guy behind Valkyrie Profile, and that probably explains why you can actually break off enemy body parts, and that's where the more interesting aspect of the gameplay comes in, because it's like you can target multiple parts of an enemy, and if you break off enemy body parts you'll get more rewards, and you'll also disable some of their moves. So yeah, that's something else that I wanted to bring up. Now, one downside of this game that I need to address is the text. It's not the only game of this generation that has this problem, believe me, but the text in this game requires you to use binoculars to read the fucking text in this game, because if you don't have binoculars, you're going to have a really hard time reading the text. It's fucking tiny. I mean, jeez. Why does the text have to be so fucking tiny in games nowadays? I just don't get it. Make it clear so we can fucking read it. And that makes the tutorials an absolute pain to read, especially early on when you're trying to just play the fucking game. And yeah, like, my god. But other than that, like, as I say, I've played around with it a bit. I've had a bit of fun. I might go back to it and play more. I don't see why I shouldn't. You know, another thing I should mention as well is that I noticed that there's pawns that you can pick up as well, and it's of all the different characters in the Star Ocean series. But there is also the pre-order bonus, which kind of gave that away, which comes with Lenneth and Lazard. So yeah, there's that. And I think that's going to be used for some sort of minigame, because I've talked to certain NPCs in town and they kind of want to play this game with me, and because I don't have a deck, so to speak, as they call it, I can't play it. But I'm guessing that these pawns come into play with this game, and I'm guessing what they're doing with this is the pawns are kind of like accessories, and like you're essentially kind of like using them to win more accessories. And yeah, I remember beating the mud boss, like the mud golem boss, and when I did, behind him was a treasure chest which came with the Rainer pawn from Star Ocean 2. So yeah, I also got an Oprah pawn as well, and they all have different effects, and I'm guessing that you kind of like bet them to like get other pawns in like these mini games, which allow you to get more accessories with more effects that you can equip on your characters. So yeah, that seems cool, but as I say, I haven't tried the minigame. I don't know if you can in the demo, so yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. Another thing I'd mention is that this game does have a few references to earlier Star Ocean games. First of all, I noticed right off the bat a reference to Star Ocean 1 right at the beginning, where Raymond is offered a cup of coffee by Elena. Now, if you played Star Ocean 1 and you saw the first cutscene, the first thing that you hear is one of the crew members asking a captain if he wants some coffee. And then all shit happens. And yeah, another thing that I also noticed, I don't know if this was intentional, but I'm guessing that they referred to Limmel because at the end of one of Raymond's lines he says K, and I was like, surely this has to be a reference to Limmel's annoying K after every fucking sentence in Star Ocean 4. And hopefully it is them being self-aware about how terrible that was, and like an inside joke that they decided to put in there. But yeah, I noticed those two things right off the bat, so you will notice some references to previous Star Ocean games in here. So yeah, I thought I'd bring that up. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the demo. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.